and welcome to Connectivity Conversations. This is a podcast by ATC Africa where we discuss insights and innovations for building a more connected world. My name is Adironke Adebanjo, and if this is your first time, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here. And if you're coming back, it's great to have you back on another episode. I'm so excited about today's episode because we're going to be talking about rural connectivity and how we are making this possible across Africa. And to do justice to this topic is none other than our head of wireless connectivity for ATC Africa, Greg Montjoy. Welcome to the show.
Adironke, thank you very much. It's great to be here with you, and it's great to be sharing this time with the folks online as well.
It's great to have you, Greg, the way from SA.
Yes.
So, Greg, you and the team have been working very hard, at this in terms of rural connectivity and how we can make that possible. You've been looking at some very innovative solutions that we can deploy across Africa. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the scale of the problem, which is the fact that so many people across Africa are not connected. We live in the urban spaces, right? So we're connected. It's like second nature.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you think about very remote parts of Africa, they're not connected. So let's talk a little bit about that scale. What's going on?
Adironke, I think folks would be amazed to hear just the scale of the unconnectedness of Africa. In sub-Saharan Africa, we've got about 1.2 billion people, and there's a roughly 45 to 50% of those folks do not have mobile connectivity. Mm-hmm. So that's a staggering amount of people that just have no access to things that you and I would take for granted. Just sending a message, as an example, or making a phone call to our folks or a close friend, let alone the digital economy. So there's still a massive swath of people that are unconnected. Mm-hmm. And also there's a massive amount of land that's just not covered. So the challenge is to understand where these people are so we can get the coverage there. And then it's about getting mobile phones into their hands so that they can transact digitally and communicate with other folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we think about the reason why we want to connect them, what is the reason? I mean, we can easily just say, listen, in the city centers, we're all connected, it's all good. But what would be the benefit, not just for us, but for them in terms of connecting them? Yeah,
right. So you think that a bit of downtime from your mobile phone is not a bad thing, but quite the opposite. I think when people are connected with meaningful connectivity, stats show that there's a 33% increase in engagement with things like online learning, with online healthcare, and also just digital transactions. So buying things online, 88% of people that are digitally connected will buy things online. So not only are you starting to get the folks better healthcare, better education, but they're now partaking of the formal economy, which is really fantastic. So it's just an upliftment for any economy across Africa when people are connected digitally.
Yeah, absolutely. And, improving their livelihood, connecting them beyond where they are, opening up a world of possibilities, really.
Absolutely.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges, because we're talking about rural connectivity here. When we say rural connectivity, we're talking about remote areas, in Africa where even road networks aren't available, and all of that. So what are some of the technical challenges that you and the team have faced when it comes to doing that?
Adironke, spot on. I mean, I think the point that you mentioned around road access is absolutely one of the things. It's just the logistics is insane. So, we're in Lagos at the moment, and it's rainy season here. Some of these sites are, a couple thousand kilometers away from Lagos. So just a torrential rainstorm, for example, wash away the road. So just getting to the site using a truck is no longer possible. So the teams really have to think about creative ways. That's a challenge. I think then the other thing that's a big challenge in these sites is just power. So often no grid power at all. So how do you get the sites built? That's the first thing. Then how do you power them? And then I think the third big challenge for us is how do you get the connectivity from that site? So it's one thing connecting the people's phones to the site, but you got to get them back to where the content sits, whether it's your TikTok or your Facebook or whatever it is. So we use satellite connectivity to get us back to the main data center hubs where the content sits, so that the folks can actually access content and communicate with one another. So those are the three main things that we kind of have to think carefully about and solve.
Yeah, that's a good segue to talking talking about the infrastructure. So let's touch a little bit on about the infrastructure. I mean, in the big cities, we talk about these massive masts, but obviously in the rural areas, we wouldn't be looking at masts of the kind of size that we have here. So maybe tell us a little bit about the sort of infrastructure, the type of tower that we would put in a place like that, and especially with the power challenges that you mentioned, right? So we don't have a grid. What are we doing to kind of combat all of those challenges?
Great question, great point. I think, we all used to seeing super high towers. We would right size the towers for the population that's there. So we're going to optimize the coverage so that we can get the tower just high enough so that it covers the folks in a meaningful way that's also cost effective. Power, as you mentioned, and we've mentioned before, is a challenge. I think we've got a fantastic legacy of building creative, innovative power solutions across ATC Africa. And we've used that intellectual property to really come up with a very creative way of having off-grid sites. So these sites don't connect to any sort of mains. They're solar powered or with lithium-ion batteries. So the solar charges the lithium. And we really have up to 3 days autonomy on these sites. Amazing. So if it rains for 3 days, for argument's sake, we're still going to keep the site up and running. The sites are super low powered. So they're sub 500 watts, which is very, very efficient. And we've worked with our radio partners to make sure that we are delivering the least or the most efficient radio signals to the phones without drawing a whole ton of power. So we're very proud of it. And then I think that being off grid is also the sustainability angle as well.
Yeah. In terms of reduce carbon emissions, making sure that we're doing this in a sustainable way that and as you said, that is also sustainable in terms of the location and the weather conditions and just making sure that they don't have interrupted supply or interrupted power.
No, absolutely. And I think we're very proud of the fact that we're connecting the folks, but we're connecting them in a way that's green.
Yeah.
So, this is not using, the site itself has got a zero carbon footprint, which is fantastic.
That's brilliant.
And, is low touch. So we're not having to send folks out there, and we're still hitting really good uptime. So we want the folks in the rural communities to have as good an experience as we're getting in the metro areas. Yeah. It's not fair on them to have to, pay for their cell phones and not get the throughputs or the uptime that they rightfully deserve.
Absolutely. We're going to wrap up the conversation, but let's just talk a little bit about why all of this is so important and like what our goal is as ATC in terms of the sort of digital experience that we want to bring to the rural communities.
Yeah. Adirunke, maybe I can use an example of just some of the benefits we're seeing. And in one of our sites, we've been chatting to the local community, and there's one farmer that is now using the connectivity to send photos of his crops to the local market. So he's securing a price. He's seeing if it's worth his while making a trip, which is quite a long way away from where the community is. So we're just seeing an upliftment of business in the rural spaces with the ability to be able to communicate with markets and sort of as I said, pre-secure a price and know whether he should spend the money on the fuel to get his goods to market. So we're seeing the adoption increase. Communication with family and friends is also another one that's really heartwarming. Just to make a call to a family member that's now either studying or working in one of the big metros, back to see that mom and dad or the grandparents are okay is really heartwarming. But I think for us as well, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's excellent and that the end user experience is world class. So this is not a watered down service that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But if you need to make an emergency call, the service is there and it's going to work. If you need to, do a course or make a call to someone when you need to, that it works, and that the speed is high enough so that the actual frustration of of using the service is almost zero. We all know what it's like to try download something and you just see the spinning wheel, right? Yeah. So we really are targeting having a world-class experience for our customers and their customers as well.
Brilliant. That's such a great way to wrap up the conversation. Thank you so much, Greg Montjoy, for joining us to shed light on how we are making rural connectivity possible across Africa. And if you don't know this, Greg is the head of wireless connectivity for ATC Africa. It's been a pleasure having you on Connectivity Conversations.
Adironke, thank you so much.
Thank you. And my name is Adironke Adibanja. It's been a pleasure having you join us as well. We'll catch you on the next one.